Today is Tuesday, February 26, 2019. Eric Smith and I are here in Rexburg, Idaho. We've been discussing podcast ideas for the last few weeks and have agreed upon one that we feel would be good for today. So I just wanted to welcome Eric.
Thank you. Good to be here.
So, good stuff. We released the last podcast on shame and guilt on Sunday. We've had a really great response on that.
Yeah, it's been pretty awesome.
So hopefully that'll help you guys. If you haven't listened to that or any of the others, I just encourage you to go back through and re-listen or listen to those podcasts, especially on shame energy that just was released, discussing ways that you can release shame and guilt and talking about how that affects the energy bodies and stuff like that. That serves as an energy session for you.
Yeah, it's been really nice. Your comments have been validating to us. It's always nice to know that we got something right from heaven that might be useful to you guys. And on that note, on communication, we just had an energy conference with Julie here in Idaho Falls, and it was so nice to mingle with lots of you. There were so many that I wanted to talk to, and I could feel, a pull to talk, and we weren't able to do that. But it came to my attention how few people knew how to contact Julie and I, and so I just wanted to take the opportunity to let you know we welcome your emails. We both read them when they come to... Sorry, I'm drawing a blank right now.
A Greater Tomorrow 2014 at gmail.com.
Right. So if you send us an email there with comments or questions or, your witness of things, that would be welcome.
Yeah. If you're having difficulty remembering what the email is, it's the title of my first book with the year it came out, which is 2014. So just A Greater Tomorrow 2014 at gmail.com.
Another thing that came out of that conference was one woman made a comment about opening comments on the podcast on YouTube. We haven't done that before. There's been trollers and some negative comments. We've also had lots of nice comments that have been welcome, but we just wanted to avoid that. But we want to try opening it up again. We'll filter these comments and watch for trollers and that kind of thing. And so just watch for the comment section on any upcoming podcasts.
Yeah, thank you, Eric. Here's the thing with the comments. The other reason I was given very clear directive not to open the comments because of trollers, and we want to keep the energy of the Julie Rowe show with positive energy. It affects the vibration when somebody opens up a podcast. So energetically, there's a lot of reasons. Also, if somebody wants to say something that they don't like, they can email me. I don't need them putting that out into the universe to make other people upset or to create negative energy. The way I look at energy and how I know it has a ripple effect. And also, this is my show, and I don't have to allow people to do that. So just know that's the case. That's what's going to happen. And the other reason is that I don't have any time to respond to that stuff. As it is, I barely have time to respond to emails, and it's like, 1 out of 100 emails I can actually respond to. And so, same with Eric. He's very busy. He's got a family to provide for, and he helps out a lot here, and this could serve as a distraction technique. So this is a trial, and I'm just going to see how it goes and wait to see if I get a different directive that we need to close the comments again if people do not have respectful boundaries.
Right. So it'll give you a forum to comment on things that were discussed. Just keep your comments respectful and appropriate, and they'll get approved. And also just be mindful that if you ask questions on that forum to Julie or I, we won't be answering those, but you're welcome to discuss amongst yourselves.
Yeah, we're not going to get on there and discuss anything. This is for you guys, so don't direct anything at us. I think that's good.
Okay.
Let's see.
Your conference, how'd that go?
Oh, yeah. Saturday, February 23rd, we did 3 2-hour classes, and we had about 100 people in each one, I think, just under 100. It was great. I'm exhausted. I got beat up by the adversary really hard Saturday night and all day Sunday and all day yesterday. And today I see the light, which is great.
That's good.
I'm still alive, and I'm not joking when I say that. It was pretty nitty-gritty. That's what happened after Provo 2, and I knew it, and I'm going to know it every time I go into these classes, but I want you to know that I will still do the classes, and it's totally worth anything the adversary throws at me because we cleared a lot of energy, and we taught quite a few people some skills that will help them to work to clear out some of their trapped emotions and other things. So I feel good about it. We've had really good response, and I hope that But those who came can feel my love for you and my gratitude that you came to learn and to hopefully improve your lives.
Yeah, the support was pretty phenomenal. There was good energy in the room.
It was great.
I was grateful to be there and witness you in action for the first time. It was eye-opening for me. I still have questions, Julie, I'm not going to lie. I think there were others who did as well. I could feel the questions coming up, but it's all for the best. I know that if you pursue answers to those questions, they'll come, especially when it's needed.
Right, thanks. So having said that, we're going to talk a little bit now. I know I've announced several times about these other conferences coming up, but not everyone listens to every podcast. So I'm going to say it just quickly one more time on this one again. Saturday, March 30th, I'll be in St. George. About a week before that, we'll send out the location for the venue address and instructions and all that. So if you've signed up for St. George or plan on signing up for St. George, we still have some seats available. And I haven't even checked. I have no idea how many people have signed up, but we can seat quite a few. That's a bigger venue, so we shouldn't have any problem, getting enough space for people. What else? Let's see. Honolulu, Hawaii is April 13th. That is a much smaller venue by more than half of what St. George is. We just don't have, from what I see, we're not going to have as big of a need for a larger venue. And it's more expensive for people to get to Hawaii, so that makes sense. We're doing a lot of that mostly for the native Hawaiians, the Polynesians and stuff that live out in Hawaii.
That's awesome.
And then Saturday, May 18th is Mesa, Arizona. And so that's coming along. That venue's a pretty similar size to Provo and Idaho Falls. Idaho Falls was a smaller venue. It sat like 35 less than Utah. So, plenty of room as of right now. Let's see. I think in that case we can seat like 100 or something. Most of the venues we can seat like 100. I think in Hawaii we can seat 40. So a little bit more in St. George. So, and we've had full classes, so just keep that in mind and don't procrastinate if you're sure you want to go.
Maybe I'll throw a link down at the bottom in Podomatic and YouTube for where you can register for those classes if you're interested.
Sounds good.
Okay.
And if you've come to one of the other classes, I teach new information every time. There'll be some repeat, but new information every time, and it's said differently, even the same information. So we've got some people that are coming to every event, and if you can afford it and the Spirit tells you to do that, that's great. You'll get taught new things every single time. And
Sure.
clear energy, new energy every time too. So,
Right.
Yeah.
It seems like your message is kind of catered to your audience a little bit.
It is.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, so let's get on with the topic for today.
Okay, enough business. Julie, have you ever noticed, like, I remember when I was in college and I would learn a topic, some theme that would come out of class, and then I'd go to my next class and the same topic it'd come up, and then a friend might say something about it, and it's like, man, it's like I'm really meant to learn something about this topic. That's been the case for me lately. It seems like I get a text and a YouTube thing or social media thing from somebody, and they're all along similar lines, and we're seeing that in some of our close circles of people that are studying things. Well, I've had some epiphanies as these themes have kind of unfolded to my mind, and I thought it'd be nice to talk about those. But it's along the lines of people who are enlightened and who are following the Spirit and are truth seekers and are just trying to discover truth and reveal truth and expose darkness. And there are just a lot of good people in the world, and people in history, people past, present, and future are in this category. So Julie and I just went through a list of people that we think fit this category, and we'll just talk through some of those.
That sounds good. So you want to start with Adam?
Yeah.
With that? Okay. Well, I think what we should do is just start with, like, from Adam and then move through some of the people that have come to mind quickly.
Yeah.
And then kind of go modern day, some of the people that Eric's felt prompted to talk about.
Yeah,
so.
Sounds good. And as you listen to these people, you know, there are plenty of others that we're not going to mention, but just one thing they have in common is they're enlightened, they are truth seekers, they're revolutionaries in their own way, and they were courageous and stood up defending truths that were revealed to them. So think about those things as we go through this.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, so the first one is Adam. And with that, I want to mention also Father Abraham, because they had some similarities in some of their characteristics and some of their the verbiage that's used in the scriptures about them, both of them being the father of many, and, so let's talk about Adam for a little bit. And obviously he has had a major impact on the earth as a father, and Father Abraham and the covenants that Abraham made with Father in heaven. I'm just going to kind of mention the names more than anything.
Cool.
All right, so the next one that came to mind was Esther, and the dramatic influence she had, married to, being chosen and married to King Xerxes, or Ahasuerus, who at the time was king of Persia, which was a huge, huge area that he covered in his reign, right? And the influence she had for her people and for the Persian people as well. The next one that came to mind was Moses. And so I encourage you to go back through the scriptures and read about these individuals. Moses, and look what he did for his people. But not just his people, his influence still affects us today as you study about him in the scriptures and you see the laws that we have that have been brought about, So.
With regard to Moses, I just admire his courage with standing up to this political figure that he was raised with, and the courage that would have taken. Lots of guts. Yeah,
I've shed many tears regarding Moses. I have a great love for him. All right, and then the most poignant figure, of course, on the planet and in this eternal round is Christ, and everything that he did in his mission and that he does do. With some of the mission that I have and some of what I see that I need to do in the future and what I see coming for me, they continue to show me the mission of Christ, the crucifixion, the Garden of Gethsemane, and I keep having this, because I see past, present, and future, they will show me past vision, like a vision of the past, and over and over again, as I ask questions about my mission and who I am and what they want me to do and how this impacts the earth and my relationship that way, they continue to show me the Savior and remind me that I can take courage in who I am in my mission because Christ has suffered all. He atoned for all, and even in my weakness, if I put my trust in him, I can fulfill whatever he asks me to do. And the flashback I keep getting more than anything lately is when Christ was in front of the Sanhedrin with the Pharisees and Sadducees and all of the testifying he had to do, as they basically, the Jewish faith excommunicated him from, because he was teaching doctrines and other things, right? Principles and doctrines and ideas that did not fit with the law of Moses and with the Jewish faith at the time, because he was, starting Christianity, and how he was consistent in delivering his message. He knew who he was, just like he knows who he is now, and he did not shirk from his duties. Not only did he not, he continued to say, I'm the Son of God, and he testified of his mission, even knowing and having been taught by Father himself and having clear vision that he would be in the Garden of Gethsemane suffering at some point and then hung on the cross for standing up for truth.
And it seems almost every doctrine he taught, he effectively, not that he had any fear at all, but was probably constantly curious about who was looking over him and what effect his words would say.
He had fear. Growing up, as he was being taught, he absolutely was mortal. It took great faith, even though he was a part, not a mortal like we are. He had, I have been shown very clearly, and he has told me, oh yeah, I was afraid. I had to work through all of those emotions.
Interesting.
As any mortal would.
That's actually really validating and comforting to me.
I mean, he condescended below all things. That means he had to feel everything.
Wow.
And that didn't just mean in the garden. Throughout his life, to prepare to do the final part of his mission, he had to push back and push through all of that fear energy and all that, and have work through his faith so that his faith could grow in knowing who he was. Even though he'd been born in the circumstances he was and had been raised knowing his identity, they taught him line upon line. He didn't just, at the age of 8 know that he was going to be hung on the cross. They didn't show him that at the age of 8. He had to grow into his mission like we do.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So a true revolutionary, really. He revolutionized religion in one sense. I think it just took a ton of courage to stand up to basically the establishment of religion at the time, and I really admire him for that.
It's interesting, his impact on the earth and in the eternities, because there are these people out there that obviously work for the adversary and or are deceived in some other capacity, not realizing they're working for him, who can't deny that he's had a significant impact on the world because his name, his face, his teachings are everywhere.
Right.
And he didn't live very long. And so they've tried to make him out like, oh, he was a great prophet, or he was a good leader, or he was a nice man. And it's like, no, he was a God. He is a God. He is the Christ.
Right.
And they try to minimize who he is. And so I just want to witness and testify of who I know him to be, which is the Savior and Redeemer of this world and many other worlds. And not only a man, but a God who loves you, who knows you, and who wants to help you, and who sacrificed and condescended below all things. I want you to study that. Think about the word condescension. And when you hear in the scriptures the condescensions of Christ with an S, ask the Lord what that means. He gave up everything. He risked everything that he had attained to come and fulfill this earthly mission that has had such a huge impact, not only on planet Earth, but in worlds past, present, and future to come.
Yeah. I think you're referring to a scripture, and I think it's Alma, the condescensions of Christ. Yeah, it's a very curious phrase. Yeah. Thanks for your witness and testimony on that, Drew.
I love him. He's terrific. So
I think you had Joan of Arc as another revolutionary type person, a courageous, fearless person who stood for truth at all costs and ultimately gave her life.
Right. So they've shown me a lot about Joan of Arc and the life of Joan of Arc, and I've felt many of her emotions from what she went through. Again, having to stand in front of the king and testify to him, and then many within her faith of the Catholic Church, knowing, again, also being visionary at some point in time, that she would be put to death. She even had visions and was shown that she would be burned. She was shown at some point that she would be injured before that even happened, when she was at battle. And she had very strong moral character. Being a young girl at the age of 19, when she was burned at the stake, I looked to that life, right, of Joan, and they continue to show me that if Joan could do it, I can do it too, in regards to standing up for truth at all costs. And I've had a lot of people that, I think one of the reasons they show me is because Joan was visionary, and she also had her angels talk to her, and she had no fear, and when she needed to tell people that that's what her circumstance was. And she had angels start talking to her at the age of 13. Well, I had them when I was younger, but most of mine, it significantly changed at the age of 13 when I read the Book of Mormon for the first time. And they've been bringing that to light to me, the similarities of Joan of Arc's life and mine. I'm 46. She was 19 when her life ended. In my circumstance, I've had many more years of life experience to get to the point where I can do my mission. But she's amazing to me that at such a young age, she was so convicted. And she talked about, Michael, as in Adam, and Archangel Michael was one of her main angels that gave her directives. Mm-hmm. And the interesting part about that is that he oversees the armies and the warriors, right? Many of the light warriors. And so when I think of Joan of Arc and I think of Adam or Michael, who's the same person, I think of the light warriors that are on the other side of the veil, and they're like some of the ultimate light workers. Mm-hmm. That's what we're going to title today's podcast, Light Workers.
I love that. So. Love that. After Joan of Arc, of course, there have been many others, but we thought of a group of people, the founding fathers of our nation, and how fearless and courageous they were at a time of tyranny and principles that were not pure by the King of England. They stood up. They were strong. Anyway, what thoughts?
Specifically George Washington. Yeah. What a leader he was. Now, here's the other thing about George Washington is he also was visionary, not to the same degree as some of these other individuals, but he admitted that he'd had dreams and visions, and that he had a visitation from at least one or more angels. And so that took courage on his part. That record didn't come out, I don't think, until after he had passed, because I'm guessing that would have probably jeopardized his standing with those that did not believe in those things, or would have criticized or mocked. Mm-hmm. But there are records where he shared that and had it recorded, or someone recorded it, that he had told them about some of those experiences. The next one that comes to mind, and I just want to put a plug in for those founding fathers. What amazing men. Now there's another ploy by the adversary to try to criticize George Washington and the founding fathers and make them out like these awful men. And I am here to witness and testify to you that that is a lie. If you haven't read my first book, I encourage you to read that section in the book Greater Tomorrow. And we talk a little bit about that and how these, while not all of them were specifically religious men, they were all God-fearing men. And many of those, if not all of those leaders, were definitely inspired by the light side. And many of them had angelic ministrations, dreams, and visions. Yeah. All right, next one of my favorites, Joseph Smith.
Same here.
Yeah. If you haven't read the book Saints, I encourage you to read that book. It's a great book. Joseph Smith, what a leader. And he still continues to be a leader on the other side of the veil. I see him as a general's general, if you will, leading the light warriors and light troops on the other side of the veil as we are enduring spiritual battle and warfare. And he has had an absolutely critical mission to this planet and is still playing a very key role in the eternities. So, yeah. Love that guy too.
It took so much courage for him as a young boy to share some of his divine experiences with I don't know why I keep wanting to use this word, the establishment, which in this sense would just be the mainstream religions of the time. It was just, he had unpopular beliefs, but he stood and he defended those beliefs to his dying day.
While most of his family members believed him, like his parents, stuff to varying degrees, he did actually have one brother that was absolutely opposed to him, that set out and caused him a great amount of grief. So even within his family, he had conflict, and he had varying degrees of understandings and commitments to his mission. And same with his in-laws, right? He had in-law issues, very real life experiences, and yet he also condescended to come to fulfill his mission. And what an amazing example of being strong and valiant, even from a very young age. Now, the interesting thing about Joseph Smith, too, is that he was only age of 14 when he had his first vision where he saw God the Father and the Savior. And so he wasn't much older than Joan of Arc when she had her experiences. And they continue to show me Joseph Smith and his story as well, I think to give me courage that they did their missions, surely I can do mine. Mm-hmm. Right? I mean, if you want to talk about hard missions, the Savior and Joseph Smith had extraordinarily difficult, and that's a total understatement of what they had to come and accomplish. And so I look at my mission and I'm like, I got it pretty easy. I'm like, that's no problem.
Yeah, he's a remarkable man. Well, if we, there's so many names that we could mention, and I think even by now, many of you listening have probably thought of many other enlightened people who have made great contributions to the earth and who were courageous and strong and defended truth. I've come across 4 that I just want to mention, and these all come from social media things, and I've just seen this pattern, actually many patterns and themes in the things they're discussing, and I can't help but see high vibration, as Julie always refers to it, coming from these people. These, right?
Sorry, yeah. Go. And this is what keeps coming to me is we've used mostly religious figures from the scriptures, or obviously Joan of Arc and George Washington aren't specifically mentioned in scriptures, so we've done about half and half there. But what Eric and I felt prompted to do is to mention those that are not of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and to specifically reveal to you 4 individuals that have had huge impact, that are high vibration, bright spirits that came to the earth in the circumstances they came in so that they could do their missions, who they might not otherwise have been able to do if they'd been born under the covenant,
Right.
which is an interesting perspective if you think about that. I think we have this false belief, in fact, I know we do, in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, that if you're born under the covenant, you must have done something premortally that made you better than somebody else, and that is an absolute false tradition.
Right.
From what I see and what I've told by the light, there are some people that were actually some of the greatest light warriors and leaders in the pre-existence, and they came knowing that they needed to help a certain family line or a certain community or group, that they wouldn't be able to possibly do that mission the way they needed to if they had been born under different circumstances. And so I just want to put that out there. We are not saying in modern day that we don't have many, many amazing individuals within the LDS faith. What I'm saying is most of those listening to this know of who those individuals are. And I want to give kudos to these 4 individuals that we see varying degrees of light in, but they all have truth that needs to be recognized. And I'm trying to help clear you of some false beliefs and some pride and some other things as we look at those on our planet who are doing very important work.
Right. Thank you for that preface, Julie. The first one that came to my mind, I've been following this guy, Michael Janich. Most of you know him as Dutch Sense. And he has high vibration. Now, here's the thing that I like about Michael. He can throw an F-bomb out there, and I'm not saying I like that, but he's he might have some tattoos. He doesn't fit the image of, a highly spiritual person, but like Julie was saying, high vibration. I have known from almost the first time I heard him that the Lord is pouring out his spirit in him for a purpose. And this is what I see. Michael and I have some similarities. He's a geoscientist and I'm a geoscientist by trade. And so I'm very interested in the things he says. The things that he's talking about with regard to the earth and the transfer of energy across the earth and the way it affects volcanoes and earthquakes is fascinating. It's groundbreaking, and it's completely contradictory to, again, the word establishment. Geoscientists across the world argue with his principles. He's revolutionizing it. So all these other figures we mentioned, he has things in common with them. He's fearlessly standing forward and defending truth as he knows it. And I find that so admirable. Mm-hmm. And he gets a lot of persecution for it.
He does. And I've heard from people that I know quite well, I think, anybody can make a lucky guess, but nothing he ever says actually, comes to fruition and stuff like that. That's not true. I haven't listened to him a lot, but I've had enough people send stuff to me that he knows. The few times I've looked at his models and stuff on his website, on YouTube, what I see with those is similar to what they have shown me in night or day vision related to what's going on energetically with the earth. Whether he views it that way or not, that's what I see. And so I find that part fascinating. So I agree with that. And I'm not a follower of him. I don't ever get on there. I've gotten on there twice, and I have people that send me stuff when there's earthquakes and stuff like that.
Right. Well, he's a fascinating scientist.
Yeah.
So check him out. And by the way, we don't have any kind of connections with these people, right? There's no.
We have no agenda or anything. No.
Right.
They may not even like me, and maybe they don't want me to mention them.
Or they probably don't even know you. But
no.
Yeah. Let's move on. There's another guy that I came across who's similar to Michael Janich in that he has geospatial interests like me. He's a museum person. He's an archaeologist. He's a scientist. His name is Michael Tellinger. He's from South Africa. You can Google him. He has tons of stuff on YouTube. And I encourage you to watch some of his things. And with each of these people that we're mentioning, by the way, they're not all true, but they have a high degree of truth. And again, here's a guy who's introducing concepts and principles that have been discovered, fossils, archaeology discoveries that are being hidden by mainstream archaeologists and scientists, the establishment, again, if you will. And he's defending it. He's not afraid. He's speaking truth as he knows it. He's fearless, and I really like his work. So very interesting things coming from Michael
And I've actually
Tellinger.
never I haven't studied it at all, so I need to. But the Spirit told me today when Eric brought these names up that I needed to look into that.
Yeah. Again, just an increased level of light and understanding, and he's just trying to expose some of the dark things that have happened on the earth and just tell us some truth, and I find that really refreshing.
Same with the next one Eric brought up to me right before we did this session, is Joe Dispenza, and I don't know anything about him. You mentioned him briefly, but other than that, I don't really have an idea. So
yeah.
Go for that.
The thing with Joe Dispenza, you can Google him as Dr. Joe Dispenza.
Oh, and he's the guy you told me about.
Yeah,
that I listened to
you
that.
do know a little bit about him.
I listened to him speak for like 45 minutes on that link you sent me.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Oh, he's really high vibration.
These next two people, with this Dispenza and the next one, I think... I feel impressed to really mention to this audience, your audience, Julie, because they mention things that can really be beneficial to health and healing. And I know you have a lot of listeners who are struggling with Lyme's and Epstein-Barr and some of these other things. So here's the brief shimmy on Joe Dispenza. Okay, he was in a bicycle accident. He crushed 6 of his vertebrae, I think it was.
Compressed his spine, didn't he?
Yeah, he was basically paralyzed, and he went against what medical doctors prescribed for his treatment, and basically he healed himself through the power of meditation. In 9 weeks, he was walking. He went back to his practice as a chiropractor. It's a very impressive story. But here's why I like him personally. He's a scientist. He has the gift, okay? We're talking about enlightenment here. He has the gift, I believe, endued in him by God to understand things at a highly intellectual level, but to explain them on a very simplistic level.
I agree.
And so
he's highly intelligent.
Yeah. So for people, if you struggle with science and the philosophy and stuff, this guy can explain it to you. So he can explain exactly how he healed himself and many of his clients through the power of thought, enlightened thought.
And obviously we know that the true healing comes from the power of the atonement. So when we say healed himself, we mean he accessed light energy, which is the energy of Christ, and that's how he healed himself. And he did it through prayer and meditation.
Yep.
He'll call it meditation, but I was told he's, a man of faith. So, yeah.
Well said.
And the last one is Anthony Williams.
Anthony Williams, who most people would know as medical medium. Another enlightened person who has spiritual gifts. Just as a side note, I've seen Julie has many of these same gifts, or all of them. And Anthony Williams' gift is to be able to look at a person, feel their energy, know where they're lacking in their health, their nutrition, where there are imbalances, and he can prescribe a natural remedy to those things to provide the healing that they need. It's very fascinating.
Yeah, I've learned of him for a few years, but I started having so many clients ask about him that finally the Spirit said, I was like, well, I don't need to read his books because I already know this stuff, and I have the gifts. I don't need to read a book. But because I've had so many clients in the last year ask about him and what I think, the Spirit prompted me a couple weeks ago to buy his first book and then his liver cleanse book. I have just barely started when I was on the plane on my way to come to Utah and Idaho. And so I read it, but the first few chapters I read completely, and I'm amazed. It's very validating for me to understand. I'd really like to meet the guy and be like, hey, you have a sister that's like you, we should reconnect. Because it can be a very lonely road. It is a very lonely road to have these gifts and to feel like this misfit your whole life, and to keep those as secrets, even from those that are closest to you, because you're afraid the adversary tells you, that people are going to just think you're crazy and weird, or they won't want to be your friend because if they find out that you can read them that way, they're going to be paranoid because they, all that kind of stuff. And he's very courageous, and he talks about what a burden it was growing up that he couldn't just be a normal person, a normal kid. And I really identified with that. I actually cleared a lot of energy reading his book, because I felt like for the first time I found somebody that had in one area of my gifts the same degree of gift, right? Because I've met lots of other people that have similar gifts, but not to the same degree. And so I find that I often downplay my gifts because I don't want people to feel bad, or I don't want them to find out like what I'm really about, And he just comes right out and talks about his story and some of his experiences. And he doesn't have truth of, of the restored gospel. So it's through his filter and his eyes. But I've had the Spirit tell me what he means when he talks about the Spirit that talks to him and who that is. And I don't have permission to disclose who that is because that's not my place. But he has done the best he can with the knowledge he has right now to understand who it is that gives him those gifts. And I've had a lot of people ask, because the word medium has a negative connotation, the occult has absconded that word. It's not a bad thing to be a medium. That's just a word that is used. That's the word he knows to use to explain spiritual gifts that he has.
That's a good explanation. Well said.
So, and I've had people ask me, what are you, like a medium or something? And I was always hesitant to be like, no, I'm not a medium, because it seems so, like you're a psychic and all that kind of stuff. And I'm like, well, that's the side that the dark side uses to abscond and to try to, keep people from finding truth. And so I encourage you, if you're having health issues, the other thing that it does, it was very validating, because I was taught by the Spirit 14 years ago that the Epstein Barr had basically been spiritually implanted in me, and then and that they have, the Gadiantons have put, in the physical world, have put Epstein Barr in our preservatives, our foods, our shampoos, our soaps, our laundry detergents, and that virus has been mutated, and that there were 60 different viruses. He talks about there being 16 versions of Epstein Barr. I actually know that there's thousands. They just haven't been discovered because they're cloaked and they spirojet. But it's been put purposely by, and they put it in our medications. You can clear that out energetically, but if you don't know that, you have no idea that you have Epstein Barr, and it goes in these stages that he talks about. He doesn't talk about clearing it energetically, but what he does do for his clients is helping them do physical things with diet and other things in addition to meditation and stuff like that, which is energy work. And so he's basically tapped in, and he talks about this, the medicine of the future, if you will, that is breaking records in science, that doctors, because they're living in Western medicine, which it's got some light, but it's actually a much lower vibration with what our doctors are taught compared to what a lot of alternative healthcare is. And even the alternative healthcare communities, they get some of it, but they're not getting the full picture, And he doesn't get the full picture either, right?
But it's an increased level. And so this is a pattern that I've seen among these four people. Again, elevated thinking, elevated light. I see this all as preparation to a terrestrial world. I mean,
yeah, I do too.
Right? It's and so. Oh, and just I have to add this too. I'm seeing increased light in some music that's coming out. It's darkening in other areas, right?
Right. Well, we're getting the polar opposite effect.
Exactly. Yeah. And I'm starting to see what's happening is the Lord is just putting his Spirit in people to increase their thinking, their vibration, their energy, and
their gifts really are coming alive.
Exactly. And it's all in preparation for the second coming of the Savior and the building of the terrestrial kingdom. So
right. It's very exciting days we live in.
Yeah, it really is. Can I just make one more scientific comment here about these four? A pattern that I saw among many of these people is they spoke about energy. Michael Janich, Dutchens, he talks about the energy across the earth. Dispenza, he talks about the energy in the body and energy around you, and he calls it the quantum field. And
he talks basically quantum physics,
quantum mechanics. It's all the same thing. And Joe Dispenza helped open my understanding to what that is. And
I have to interject. Yeah. Quantum physics and quantum mechanics are a little bit different, but they're in the same. They tie in. And I only say that because I've never studied this on Earth. I've just been shown it in night vision or when I've been on the other side of the veil. And I just want those that are involved with these things, whether they are on the side of the veil or the other, to know that there is a difference, but they tie in together.
Yeah, okay. That's a true point. No, it's good to clarify. So, and there are other models of physics too, and these are the ones that were mostly proposed by Albert Einstein and his contributions there.
And that's where things like sacred geometry come in, when you're talking about energy work and healing. Like, it's amazing. It's amazing. I got all this stuff in my head. I just can't explain it,
Well, and here's the thing about it. The physicists are creating these models to try to understand energy, and we know almost nothing about about energy, really.
Yeah,
and
the energy
mechanics.
of our bodies, let alone anything else on the planet, and especially the energy of the Earth and how it's tied to the planets, or the
Yes.
solar system, or the sun, or whatever.
And so, how interesting that you've got all these people that are increasing in their understanding, their light and vibration, and they're talking about energy. Well, it seems to me, and Julie, I'm going to put you in this category of these same people. You are a master. I'm going to say this in your own.
I did not know he was doing this.
I know. I saved it for the end, but
oh my gosh.
Each of these people are masters in their field. And Julie, I consider you a master in the field of energy in your use of it. I feel like you're able to discern it, to understand it, to see it, to, this isn't the right word, manipulate it. It's not manipulate it, but direct it or use it.
Move the energy.
Move it. Yeah, something like that.
I don't manipulate the energy. I move it and I ask it, and then through its own agency, it chooses to turn to light energy, to transfigure, transform, translate, transmute.
Yes. And so in your own field, you're a master at it, and you're, I know that this, again, is in preparation for things to come. Yeah. And so energy is just an important part of moving forward in preparation for the second coming. And I guess that's really what I wanted to say. There's a lot more I would want to say about the history of mechanics and physics and stuff, but we can get into that another time.
That's nice of you, Eric. I am a work in progress, but I am thankful for the gifts the Lord's given me and that He's allowed me to learn and to do this work and to help other people learn and do the work. Everything is energy.
Yeah.
And when you learn how to work with that energy and to let it flow in and through and around you, you have less damaging effects. The dark side has less power over you. Mm-hmm. You learn spiritual warfare and other things that are important, tools and techniques to be able to help keep you safe and to do other things that help lead you to a higher vibration, which leads into things like translation. It's actually part of what goes in with a resurrected body, New Jerusalem, what we see with the earth being on a higher vibration, and eventually being a celestialized body and a celestialized earth. And so it's very fascinating if you study eternal laws of science. Science is not caught up, and they have a lot of falsehoods, but there's still a lot of truth out there. And the Enlightenment period that we're in right now is just going to escalate.
Yeah, well said. And I just want to put it in the context of, and this might make some people uncomfortable, but it's my witness and it's my truth, that all the energy we've discussed is referenced in Doctrine and Covenants section 88, where it talks about the light that is in all things, through all things, above all things, beneath all things. It's the light of Christ. It's His power. And these people are accessing this power of the Savior in new ways to create healing, to increase thinking and understanding, to make this world a brighter place. And I'm really moved and touched by what the Lord is doing right now by inspiring people from the grassroots. It's not only from organizations where we're getting our truths from, but the Lord is curiously enlightening and pouring His Spirit out upon individuals and letting them teach some truths.
Yeah. A lot of amazing people on the planet right now. The Lord saved His best. We hear that, and that's absolutely true. We've got amazing, amazing things that are going on the planet, and some even more amazing things coming. I want to witness and testify to you that even though we live in some very difficult days right now, we have a much greater tomorrow coming, and you can make your day great today by having hope and faith and putting your trust in the Lord and asking Him what you need to do to bring more light to the earth. I leave this witness and testimony with you, the power of the atonement, the power of Jesus Christ, letting Him know and you know that I love Him very, very much, and I'll do everything in my power to help spread the word and to bring as much light to this planet and the universe as I can.
You're doing a good job.
I'm working on it. Thanks, Eric. You too. Thanks so much, everybody. Have a great night.